So, Hannah, today we wanted to talk about investments, the things we've invested in, also the
Yep.
things which we've enjoyed, what we've absolutely hated, a few horror stories along the way, but maybe kind of the outlook for investors if you were looking to get involved now, what you should be thinking about right this moment, depending on what the
Yeah,
market's in.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting time to get involved in property now. It's very different from when you and I got involved. And to be honest with you, we're only talking a few years ago, aren't we? We're not talking decades ago. Market's massively changed. I think it might be quite cool to talk about what we think is good for the here and now.
Okay, I always like to start with the horror stories and the things that I don't like, and then move on to the good stories because everybody always talks about the joys and the beauty and the money and all of the profit you're making,
Yeah,
but nobody talks about
yeah,
the real harsh stuff, which I don't
yeah,
like.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I agree.
I'm gonna go with my favourite, my pet hate, which is serviced accommodation. Right. I know that this is a massive thing for everyone. A lot of the younger generations, they absolutely love this. They get involved in it. They kind of, want to start off with a minimum amount of cash because it's hard to build up for a deposit, right? You can't just get
Yeah,
50 grand just to magically appear in your account unless your dad or your mum or somebody's got a large chunk of change that they're willing to just dump on your
be nice, wouldn't it?
bank account. So people have got to start somewhere. But for me, it is a dirty industry. It's just honestly it's like scraping the barrel. In my opinion, it's scraping the barrel because you're borrowing somebody else's asset to then do what you want to do with it, which is a good way to do things. It's a good way of leveraging. But if you do have the capital, I honestly wouldn't touch it. And I'm going to give you a few reasons or a few stories to highlight that. But I'm going to try and balance it out because look, it's not all bad, and there are some good things with it if you can really stick it
I was gonna
out.
say I'm gonna add a caveat to that, but I'm gonna let you go. You go, you do you, and then I'll add a caveat to it.
You don't know where I'm going with this, right?
I
So
haven't got a clue.
so look, I'm the kind of person that likes to really understand everything, to try and understand all facets of the business. So I decided to go and manage my own units, right? I wanted to understand how to manage them, how to source them, how to furnish them, so do everything so that if somebody asks me a question, I can give some valid information. I can tell them exactly how much it costs, how long it took to do, how to organise your lockbox, how to do all these different things. But the main thing for me about service accommodation is that the types of guests that you get. And if you don't know how to protect yourself, or if you don't have a management company that knows what they're doing, it is good. It could be a real ticking bomb. So for me, I I took on a property, and essentially I had a cleaning company that was doing the sort of the general clean to start with, and just to make it prepare it for the first guests. So I had to go to IKEA and go and get some bits and bobs to sort of do the last few furnishings. So anyway, the cleaner calls me up and says, "Hey, I've got some good news for you, Gwyn, and some bad news." I was like, "Right, okay, you hit me with the good news." She goes, "I've nearly finished the clean." I was like, "Brilliant stuff. That's exactly what you should be doing, right?" So she went, "Yeah, yeah. Bit of bad news, or maybe it's not bad. I'm not sure." She said, "But it's like a police squad outside the house with blue gloves on, going into the house opposite. And basically, there was a drug den and prostitution house opposite the property that I'd taken on. And because I didn't know the area, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So obviously, during the tenancy, you're getting more and more of these idiots coming down the streets, knocking on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning, saying, "Hey, hey, where's my drugs? I need my fix. I need my fix. Give me the money, quickly, quickly." All that sort of stuff. And you're thinking, if you're trying to rent out a property to really eloquent, you know, decent people, and they're hearing this through the sort of single glazed windows, you can imagine the sort of the fear that gets into the sort of the body. So that's one just story that I kind of wanted to highlight, which is from the kind of bad sort of spectrum of things. I'm going to go for another one just because I do like my service
I I
accommodation stories.
I got a good one as well, but I go on, you go.
And then the second one, I guess, is funny enough in the same property. I don't know what it was about that property, but this is how, if you don't know what you're doing with this product and you're managing it yourself, and how if you become an active investor, you can really lose money quickly by doing the wrong things. So I
Yeah,
had a
absolutely.
I had a booking system, right, where you booked on a website, it was linked to somewhere else, and it sort of took your credit card details. So there was a group of guys that were staying there. We're going to be watching the boxing, from what I could understand. So they were meant to be paying about £300 for the night because I said, look, if there's going to be loads of you, I want to charge a bit of a premium. So these guys booked it. They put it on their credit card. And I thought, oh, great, no worries. Anyway, next day, cleaning company comes. They're knocking on the door. These guys not opening up, not letting her in to clean the property. They're meant to be checking out at 11. It's 12 o'clock. You know, she can smell weed in the property. They've been doing, drugs and God knows what. So they're in the property, don't really speak a word of English, and sort of swearing and shouting at her. And she said to me, look, I'm really nervous. I can't get into the property. What do I do? So I said, look, give it 15, 20 minutes, see what happens. So these wasn't 5 people in the house. There was like about 12. And they were kind of like, not local people, put it that way. And they were going down the stairs and barging her out the way. And she just said, like, I feel really nervous. And they trashed the property, not really badly, but they trashed it. But the problem was that I checked on the booking and the credit card was an illegal credit card. So not only did they trash the property and I had to pay for it to be cleaned twice, I made absolutely no money. And I was thinking, what the hell am I doing this for? If I'm not making any money, I'm dealing with all this day-to-day shite. And it kind of put me off a little bit. I was a bit bruised, put it that way. I don't know many good stories, so I've got more bad stories if you want me to tell them. But
yeah, no, I to be fair, I've had to give it a bit of an even playing field here. I've had more good experience with service accommodation than bad experience, but I think that's largely due to a couple of things: luck and picking in the right in a good area, right? So. Yeah. But it's not to say I still haven't had my horror story. So obviously I invested in Cambridge, and I invested in not knowing, and this is exactly the same as you, not knowing the area very well. I grew up in Cambridge, but I didn't know obviously like street by street. Yeah. I grew up in the countryside and the villages around it, and I got this 2-bed cottage, and I negotiated with the landlord. I agreed to change all the carpets, like make it look really nice. I did the flooring in the bathroom. I redid the tiles in the kitchen. I spent a lot of money. Probably I spent about 5 or 6 grand just to like bring it up to stand and make it look really nice. But it was perfect, right in the centre of Cambridge, private parking, and the rent was really cheap. And I'd agreed it on a 5-year agreement, which actually is up, I think, this December. And I'm paying £1,250 for it in the centre of Cambridge, which is really good. Really good, right? So I was like, I have to take this deal. What I didn't realise is that the property is literally opposite a homeless shelter. And I mean, like, the next house in front of you is a homeless shelter. And I thought, well, wait a minute, it's a day's homeless shelter, there's not going to be any problem during the night. The guests mainly come in the evening. I was like, it's going to be fine. Well, the worst thing is, in Cambridge, like any other city, you have your homeless people, which are dotted around the city. But then when you have a focal point about where they're supposed to visit to get needles, to get soap, to get food.
To get needles?
Well, obviously, yes, you can get like clean needles. Yeah, they encourage like clean drug use. Yeah, so they can drop off their dirty needles and stuff there once they've used them.
Come down, get your clean needles.
Yeah. So
smack yourself up.
It's to stop them like littering in the street with dirty needles. They give them clean needles to bring back, and they exchange them for dirty ones to keep them off the street.
Fair play. Fair
so obviously you've got loads of homeless people coming around. So in the winter you didn't really get it. In the summer, when they've had a bit of a drink, the weather's nice, you get loads of homeless people come to the centre. And I had a complaint once of a guy that had filmed what he described as 2 homeless people beating the shit out of each other directly outside the property, and he was afraid for his life. So he'd barricaded himself in the cottage because he was worried they were going to break down the door and rob him.
This is a guy.
So I was like,
was nervous.
This is the guest, right? Okay. This is the guest. So I said, look, it is rowdy. It could get rowdy there at times, and I mean, like, people singing, drunk people, like a bit leery, but they'd literally be shooed straight into the homeless centre because they're right in a residential area.
Yeah.
So I said, look, and he's like, I've videoed it. I've got video evidence. I was like, look, that's fair enough. Look, I understand it. Send me the video evidence. And the video evidence was a man and woman on top of each other that weren't fighting, that looked like they were very much having sex outside the property in the middle of the road. Oh. So And then all you could see was this guy twitching the curtains, right, and hiding behind the curtains upstairs.
Okay.
So we had to deal with that one. That was an interesting one.
So that was that a good story or a bad story? I didn't get it.
I mean, bad story because we had to refund him some of the money. And at the end of the day, the annoying thing I think with serviced accommodation is most of the time, it's not all the time, but because it's so hell bent on reputation, one bad review screws you over, doesn't it? So you have to give something. You have to give something back, even though I can't control that situation. The house is in the middle of a city. You know, these things happen, but the annoying thing was, like you, I lost money on it purely just because it's a situation you can't control. Good news is, however, that homeless shelter, and I'm not even kidding you, has closed down now, and my bookings have gone through the roof. I mean, they were good anyway, but it's always booked out. Like, it is always booked out.
You should
goes back.
You should stock up on clean needles.
I mean, it goes back to exactly what you were saying, Gwyn, when you were saying that if you don't know the area, you can suffer.
Yeah.
And equally, if you do know the area and you do know what you're doing, then you can make money. But I think there's so many people, and like you and me, like I picked a unit in Cambridge I don't have anymore that was a rubbish unit, and I lost a bit of money on it because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, but I guess there are some good stories with it, and there are some big bookings that you can pick up. I know lots of people that get contractor bookings, you know, for sort of 3-4 months at a time, because you need that consistency, because everybody paints a picture that you can get passive income every month, and it just isn't true unless you've got the stability of a booking for, you know, sort of a 6, 9, 12 month period. But that they don't always come around every day. You're going to have to fight hard for that. You have to have a reputation. You have to have connections. And we're looking into that now because we do like the model under the right kind of like premises, right? You could,
if you do it right, you can make a lot of money from it. You absolutely can make a lot of money. But the problem is that like you alluded to earlier, when you're getting into property investing, rent to SA is your first step. It's like going to primary school, because you learn an awful lot about it and you don't need as much money to get into it. But the problem is, go on.
Do you know what it reminds me of? You said like sort of preschool or, you know, sort of nursery.
Yeah.
It reminds me of all kids sort of fighting and sort of bickering and shouting and screaming and bitching. It's that type of industry in a way.
It is, yeah.
But it can be really kind of, you do remember it. A bit like kindergarten and nursery, you do remember it.
There are some very, very good people in the industry that have made a lot of money and are very good mentors and offer very good advice. But the other side of it is there are also some absolute charlatans in the industry that offer mentoring and advice and are shit. But the problem with it is it's not regulated, and that's part of the problem with rent to service accommodation. If you get it right, you get it really, really right. If you get it wrong, you get it really, really wrong. And the amount of people and investors that we've spoken to that have gone, I've lost 10 grand on this unit. I've lost 5 grand. I've lost this. I've lost that. And that's money you can't recover. That's it. Well, it's like when you buy brand new furniture, right? Brand new furniture pack. Let's say, I don't know, 2-bed apartment. Let's say it cost you 5 grand. Just pie in the sky figure. As soon as you've bought that furniture, you want to sell that furniture in 6 months' time, even though you think it's brand new, and nobody's been in that apartment, it's devalued by at least half.
It's like a car, right? Isn't it? It's just the moment you drive it off the forecourt, it's not worth the money you pay for it. But there is from my perspective, there is a kind of a model which can work, which is more the ultra luxury model, which I think if you can combine a couple of the good and the bad, good elements from the actual products. So the fact that you've got luxurious properties, that they are in very glamorous locations and they're very solid areas, and you've got the clientele that can come there, I do think it can work well. I just think that when you're dealing with like the hustle and bustle of being in a city centre with 100 other apartments and they've all got white sheets, bloody bedside tables and the same things all the time, it just doesn't stand out, and people will be looking for price rather than the experience. And most service accommodation providers don't provide an experience, they provide just accommodation, right? And I think people are looking for more of an experience now, whether that's additional services which you can provide externally, internally within your organisation, but they're looking for things which are a little bit more than what, just a place to put your head down at night after you've been out on the town with your friends.
I think the thing for me is, and you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. You have to be different in service accommodation because it's easy to get into the market. The rent-to-rent model in the UK is very easy to do. It's not so easy to do in the likes of like Barcelona and cities like that because it's heavily regulated. I mean, since we got into service accommodation in 2018, they were talking about regulating it then, and they still haven't.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think it's coming. It wouldn't surprise me if it is, but I can't see it being. I can't see it going as far as planning permission or things like that. I can see it being licensed potentially, but it's not going anywhere. And a lot of people are doing it. If you do it right and you're different, then you create your own marketplace. It's like with anything, right? If you think about it, why is Tesla and why are Apple so brilliant? Because they create a product that nobody else has created. They're their own marketplace. And service accommodation is very similar. It is similar to that.
So service accommodation, that's one which I love it and I hate it, a bit like Marmite. I love it when it's brilliant and I hate it when it's not.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think a lot of people in the industry are like that. They've touched it and think it's absolutely gold dust and, a diamond product. Some people think it's absolutely horrible. In terms of other stuff, I mean, flips. Let's talk about flips and buy refurbish refinance because in the last couple of years we've gone quite heavily into that, haven't we? So what do you like? What do you like about flips and buy refurbish refinance products, and what do you think about them now?
So I'm more of a lover of flips, if I'm honest with you, because I like getting our money out and I like being able to make a profit from something. I enjoy how transactional it is. I don't particularly enjoy being a landlord, if I'm honest. I don't, because so it's kind of like, so I still have some service accommodation units in Cambridge, only two. It's two. Well, two in Cambridge, and then we have one in Cardiff, don't we? So three. And to be fair, they tick over because they've got good management and they've been going so many years. The furniture's paid for. I've got no liabilities. It's great. But I find that dealing with tenants, are more annoying because if anything happens with a guest or they damage anything, the management company just go, we've claimed it from Airbnb or we've taken their deposit, sorted it, done. I'm like, yeah. Great. Whereas when you deal with management companies with tenants, like I'll give you a prime example. We've recently had a tenants move into one of our properties, and within a week they've moved another pet in. They've broken the shower door. The bathroom tap doesn't work. Suddenly the roof is leaking and it never leaked before, and 2 floorboards are broken.
Well, it's not surprising judging by the commentary from the agent in terms of who's living there.
But that's a brand new house, and look, things happen, and I understand that because it's a brand new house, you have people living in it for the first time. These, things get tried and tested. But I'm like, it's the first week, and another one, tenant property, our first ever buy refurbish refinance we did. Couple moved in, and within a couple of days, the shower was broken.
Why was the shower broken?
We think it's because they enjoyed vigorous sex in the bathroom.
Okay, same-sex couple.
Yeah, same-sex couple, and the same things kept happening.
Did we ask for photographic or video evidence to make sure that we claim that back from the right party?
No, we went. It wasn't photographical evidence. We went in to go and repair something in one of their bedrooms, and how can I put it? We found extensive evidence on the walls.
I don't understand what extensive evidence means. Do elaborate.
We found a splash zone on one of the walls, which the builder.
Yeah.
The builder tried to explain to me what it was, but wouldn't actually say what it was, which was one of the most awkward conversations I think I've ever had. But when something like this, if you want to rerun. So Hannah, I've been up into one of the bedrooms, and
can you do the Welsh accent as well? Welsh, because they're from Wales.
No, do you know what? I can't.
Okay.
It just sounds terrible. But I've been up into one of the bedrooms, and there's something on the wall. All right, John, is everything okay? Is there damp coming in, or No, it's not. It's not damp, but there appears to be some kind of fluid on the wall. All right, what type of fluid, John? And how do you know? Well, it appears that there's like a shape in the wall and there's fluid around it. What do you mean, John? I don't get what you mean. Just say it. There's a head shape on the wall and there's spray around it. I was like, that's enough. Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
Oh,
and he said,
God.
the only thing is, Hannah, because it's matte paint, it shows up.
So basically, the learning curve from that is, or the takeaway from that is to get glossy paint, or what?
Yeah, get silk paint. It's easier to wipe down. But no, sorry. Going back to the original point, I don't particularly like buy, refurbish, refinance so much. I don't mind it, but I prefer flip because I prefer to get kind of like in and out with it. We have got 8 buy, refurbish, refinance properties, and it's always a good strategy to fall back on. It's like for me and you, it's an insurance strategy, isn't it? To be honest with you, it's our backup strategy.
See, I think it's a little flips are great on one hand, but I do think that if you are careful and you're clever and you've got a buy, refurbish, refinance property, they could be much more successful long term because you're keeping the asset. You're not just giving it away and trading it for cash.
Yeah.
So if you can pull out enough money and then refinance and then rent it out for a 2, 3, 4 year period, it can be really lucrative.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
I'll tell you. I guess we're going down the theme of the bad stories before the good stories because we kind of that's how we work. We would rather be honest and open about the bad things first before talking about the good stuff. For me, the builders are kind of the biggest pain in the bloody arse, and the reason for that is because they're not always gifted in finance, in terms of cash flow and organising their kind of day-to-day stuff with paying bills and how they manage projects in general. Workmanship and organising kind of subcontractors. So a lot of the time we've had to redo things because people hadn't done it, the first time round properly. And then the third thing really is just general moral and fucking ethics.
I was wondering when you were going to come down to something like I thought you were quite reserved, to be fair.
Well, look, but there are some real unethical scumbags in this freaking industry, and to be honest, it really pains me to see so many people being stung by ripped off by these idiots, and a lot of foreign investors. That, to be honest, we've got 90% of our client base are foreign investors, and we make sure we try and look after them as much as possible because I don't live next door to the properties. I've got you to help me with some of the properties in Wales and vice versa. Yeah. These guys don't even live in the fucking area. They live like
they don't even live in the country.
They don't even live in the country. So it is just real. It's really sad to see what's happened with some builders and how they've treated people. And they've treated us badly as well, which
do you know what we talk about, and I'm sure we'll delve into this a lot more, but last year was a tough year for us because we had a particular situation with a particular firm that essentially screwed us over on different fronts. Not only did they just bill for invoices that they never supplied materials for, but when we've sold those houses or when people have moved in, we've uncovered just an absolute horror show that's underneath that obviously needs fixing. So it's interesting because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, and I don't know anybody that's worked within the property industry for a sustained amount of time and is successful that hasn't been stung at some point or hasn't been screwed over by a builder, even a little bit.
But look, there's two ways of looking at this, right? The first way is to say that it is you learn from your mistakes, and it makes you more aware. If your house gets burgled, you then go and get a burglar alarm. You put up the fence. Put up different fence. Maybe you get sort of a dog. I don't know. You put different security measures in place because you know that that's a way in which it makes you feel more comfortable. If you've been stung by a builder, a sourcer, kind of estate agent, whoever, you just go about it in a different way so you can learn from it, right? So from my perspective, these situations, it's been an expensive learning curve, but probably long term it will benefit us probably a lot more than if we hadn't gone through those issues.
Well, they say what kills you doesn't make you stronger, right? I think we've put certain provisions in place now that won't happen. I think that looks tough lesson to learn. Ultimately, I think we were just too nice, me in particular. I think
that's the wrong word. I think we were too trusting. I don't think we're
too trusting.
Too trusting because look, you're a good egg. You're a solicitor. You've got certain qualifications, certain things to adhere to, right? And you come from a certain background, and your parents brought you up
ethical, yeah.
Well, brought you up in a certain way. Yeah. So if somebody complains to you or says, I'm not happy with something, you'll try and fix it and make sure that they're happy after it. A bit like if you're on a plane and you didn't get the right service, somebody will say, here's an extra packet of peanuts or a drink or whatever to compensate for it. And I think that you're that type of person, but you expect everybody else to be similar in that sense, which is a really lovely thing to think. But in the big bad world that we live in, it's dog eat dog, and kind of people are really not as ethical as we'd hope.
Do you know what my uncle's always been in business, and
Uncle Tony.
He told me once. I remember we were having a conversation, and he trusts a few people, very very few people, and the rest he's very particular about who he trusts and who he does business with and things. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, like, is that maybe a bit over the top, or or is he just really closed in that sense? But I understand how he's got to that point, because it is business at time can be really enjoyable, and I love working with people in relationships that we've built and partnerships and churning out more and more deals and doing more and more JVs. But then equally at times, and again, I'll take you back to the service accommodation point when obviously we've been sourcing stuff, it can be savage. It's literally, the only way I can describe it is you've got a series of, let's say, horrible kind of vision, but let's say you've got a series of street dogs and somebody chucks a steak in the middle and they all fight over it. That's what it feels like at times with sourcing SAs. But yeah, it can be brutal, and then it can also be extremely lovely at the same time. But I think we've learned a lot last year.
Yeah, we have, but
for the good.
But I do want to kind of advise you not to lose the loving, kind nature that you have, because it's a bit like falling in love and getting your heart broken by a heartless bastard.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
you don't go into your next relationship thinking, I'm going to be a real bitch this time because of my previous experiences. You need to kind of go, well, that person, their kind of their issues and their problems, rather than you changing and being always more cautious and more protective. I guess that's human nature, right? If we get bitten by a dog, we will literally kind of be a bit more cautious around them. But I guess what do they say? Sort of love like it's sort of the first time.
I know what you. I know the saying you mean. I just think, look, you learn lessons in life. You get stung. It's about making mistakes and then learning from them and then growing from it. And I think, to be honest with you, as tough as it is a pill to swallow at the time, I look at kind of where we are now and what we're doing, and I think, do you know what? We're actually on a pretty decent path, and we'll get there. But quicker than we may have done before without learning this. So I love flips, but one thing that we've learned from last year is they have to have the right margin in them. They have to be worth it, because all of these small flips that we've done, if something goes wrong, then your profit is gone literally like that. Whereas on the larger ones, or the larger one that we did in Essex, you can afford to lose a couple of grand here or there, because the profits are so much wider. Whereas any little bit of mistake here, and you're spending an extra 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grand, and suddenly you're down from a 30% ROI to a 6% or a 7%. So I think that's one big lesson. The flips have to be worth it, and we need to get our margins or have a kind of like a cut off for that in terms of that. But yeah, I don't mind buy refurbish refinance. You are right in terms of the legacy, and you build things over time and whatnot. I go flips first, and then I go buy refurbish refinance once we've made enough cash to accumulate assets cheaper. That's kind of how I think about it. But I agree with you. I think we've ended up in the situation that we are now, and it is what it is in terms of having a portfolio instead of flipping some of them. What do they say? Everything happens for a reason, Gwyn.
What's a shit saying? What a shit saying. Basically,
I say it's
you make
all
it
the
happen.
time.
You make it happen. I heard one yesterday. I've got to say this is that I think is it Joe Lycett? I think the guy you like, the comedian. He said he posts on Cheryl Cole's like Instagram or Twitter account because she posts these crappy sort of like morning sort of like inspirational quotes. And
you know how much I hate them.
It was like 5 + 2 = 7. 4 + 3 = 7. Choose your own path. Such fucking shite. Absolute tripe. Honestly.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. I am a little bit of a believer in it. I do like to think that, but ultimately, it is what it is. You move on. You get back on the horse, and you try harder, and you go again.
Yeah, I get. The only thing I'd say is that with flips, you have to and buy, refurbish, refinance. You need those two strategies to work together because it works in a cycle. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of at any one point you could be in a flipping market or a holding market. Which just to explain it a little bit more, we've in the last 6 months it's not been a flipping market because interest rates are high, mortgage rates are high. Cost of lending is of high in general, and just people aren't buying as quickly as they were before for various reasons. Solicitors are getting lazy compared to what they were before. Solicitors, not our solicitor, but the other side solicitors usually. But just in general, the process is taking longer, and people aren't paying the top prices right now, and that could change in 6 to 12 months' time. But right now, as we speak, in January 2023, it's not really a flipping market unless the margins are really good.
Yeah, agreed. No, absolutely agree with you. I think around here, well, just to give you an example, this is how it can work in both ways, where it can go from what Gwyn was talking about, as in a lending market, back into a flipping market. First ever property we bought for 43,000. I think it was. We borrowed money from an investor. All in all, for the purchase price and the refurb, we borrowed 69,000, and that included interest as well. So we paid the investor back 69,000. Our mortgage was for 71,000, so we pulled out, I think it was 1,000, just over £1,000. So basically, we pulled all of our money out, paid him back, and we got £1,000 back in the bank. Rented the property out straight away. It was valued at 92.5, I think, 92 or 95.
Yeah.
And that was in 2012, February 2020, I think it was.
Yeah.
Well, we decided to sell it last year, and we sold it for 125. And I think what came back into our bank after we paid the mortgage off was something like 48 or 51, something like that. And that was it within 2 years, by doing nothing, by just holding it at the time.
I've got an inspirational quote in the back of my mind while you're talking.
Oh God!
I think it's on our website as well. It's like, is it best returns goes to those who invest and wait rather than waiting to invest. But anyway,
okay, that's not a bad one.
It's not bad. I mean, it's a bit cheesy, but
it's not bad.
But the point is, sometimes
that shows the other side, doesn't it?
Yeah. All it means is that things will come as long as you've got a plan B, C, and D, and you're protected. If you stick things out, you can actually still make good money because the market can recover. And I think that's what people get nervous about, is that this 1 month, 2 month dips and ups and downs in things. Look, life is full of ups and downs. You've got to ride the waves, right? So I think from that perspective, in property, it's no different. You've got to make sure that you've got solid deals. You're investing in products which have got good, secure margins, and then if that rainy day is needed, you need to make sure that you're protected for that rainy day and get through that storm, and then you can start selling if you need to. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. So that's kind of how they come hand in hand, and I guess that's our kind of recent experience with those two strategies.
So basically, the moral of the story is invest in flips and buy, refurbish, refinance products, but make sure that the margins are big enough to make sure that you can pull your money out at the end of it, or to be able to hold it and refinance and get a good mortgage rate, which is difficult at the moment because you can't see those returns like you did 2-3 years ago. But you just have to be patient and wait for the right deals to come along.
Yeah, look, if you buy property, I'm a firm believer in this. Whenever you buy it, it's an investment. It's the oldest investment in the book, so it's always going to go up and down in value. But make sure that you're positioned in the right position to be able to allow it to go up and down in value.
Yeah. The other stuff that we've invested in, the thing that I enjoy the most, I like the most, is probably planning gain and land and developments. Mainly because it's the more sophisticated side of property, kind of the hierarchy in terms of like the nursery, school, high school, or whatever you want to call it, university, PhD. For me, it's the kind of pushing towards that end of the spectrum, just because there's more sophisticated terms and conditions, legal agreements. There's like so many different parties involved. You've got planning consultants and ecology surveys and things. So it's basically trying to get everybody on board with projects that you're doing. And that's the kind of intellectual side of property, which I like. And I know that pretty much probably 90% of the people listening to this will go, I can't stand that stuff. It's just paperwork and councils and the rest of it. But me personally, I like that because you can add huge amounts of value to a piece of land through your knowledge and understanding of how all these different intricate parts of policies and legislation can help you achieve to make that land more valuable. So from my perspective, planning gain is my preferred strategy, especially now, because you don't necessarily have to purchase land immediately, which means you don't have to put down all of your money, but you can still obtain the rights to a piece of land and make it more valuable while the recession and things are going on in the background, and Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and all these people going in and out of power. For me, that's the thing which I enjoy the most. And land and development stuff, obviously, when you get that planning in place, then to build things out, to see how that comes to life. A refurb is one thing, but when you've got a design and an idea in your head, and then you see it in real life, it's just that. Yeah. It's just really cool to sort of see that's my baby. That's what I've produced, or we've produced, I should say.
I think it's the reward of creating something, isn't it? I think it's just something completely from scratch, and like you said, it's a definitely more challenging and complicated process, but it's incredibly rewarding. And financially, yes, it is something that is usually minimum 12 months, maximum, sometimes can be up to 4 or 5 years, depending on what you're doing. But you're talking about usually hundreds of thousands to millions of pounds.
Yeah, but I think it depends obviously where you are in your financial career, your property journey, all that sort of jazz. But obviously the more money you have, the more you want security, consistency and longevity. And those projects take, anywhere between 2, 3, 4, 5 years to be able to get the planning in place, acquire the land, build it out, sell the units. So you need that kind of longevity. You need the type of investor that would understand that process and understands that kind of projection. And most people want instantaneous success. This kind of like Instagram, TikTok sort of vibe of I want to be a overnight success from doing nothing. Which unfortunately, the hard reality is that you can't do that. It just never really happens. You need to put the hard work in, the graft, to get to that stage. And for me, it makes more sense because you can have a massive impact in your local community. And we're doing a project right now whereby we're going to be getting planning for 116 houses. It's ridiculous. And that
it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, Gwyn.
What's the population of that area? I mean, there's probably 20,000 people in the area, maybe, I don't know. So it's
I think
big...
it's more.
Go on.
I was going to say I think it's more ridiculous because that's our first ever development.
Yeah. But I think the point is that it can have a massive change, an impact for the community, And that's the
Yeah.
interesting thing for me is that how you can impact people's lives.
I forgot to tell you something. I've literally forgot to tell you something. So this is also, let me just quickly add in here because this is going to make you laugh. This is also how random living in the Welsh valleys can be at times. So my future mother-in-law rings me up last night and said, I've just had a knock on my door. Everything all right? You okay? Yeah. So long story short, this lady's mother used to work at Treherbert Hospital, and she's got the original stone plaque from the hospital, which has the date that it was built and the name of it. And she wanted to give it back to you so you could put it at the entrance of the site for when you develop it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That is
How
amazing.
cool is that?
Take a picture of it. Oh, she delivered it already, or she's going to bring it around?
No. She's taking a picture and giving it, sending the picture through tonight, and then we're going to go and pick it up because it needs 2 people to pick it up. But how cool is that?
Yeah. For those of you that probably don't know about this, obviously we have a project in South Wales in a place called Treherbert, which we're getting planning for 116 houses. And for us, the legacy and the people that potentially work there, it would be great to do something for them as well. So that's really, really nice. I know
It is really cool.
I know we talk a load of crap on this podcast, but still,
Sometimes there's some sentimental elements in there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's really nice. I like that.
It's cool, isn't it? Sorry, carry on.
Yeah,
I interrupted your flow.
And also, going back to the sentimental kind of historical elements, so obviously we have another project as well, the chapel, which is an English chapel based in Tom Pentre, which is in South Wales, in the valleys. And the interesting thing about that is that, like you say, the random people you get to meet when you do these projects. Yep. So it's almost like a big village. So we're turning this chapel into 11 apartments. And essentially, when we went down to have a look through around the building, we'd acquired it. This kind of guy came over to us and sort of hunched over. I think he must have been about 75 or 80, and he came and had this very bizarre voice. So he came over to me and sort of tapped me on the shoulder. And I was thinking, who the hell is this sort of like random stranger? So he came over and he went, "Would you like the keys?" And I kind of thought, what keys? And he said, the keys for the chapel. And I was like, yeah. How did you have a copy of these keys? Like, this is our building. I used to be the deacon. So, just like randomly, this deacon had lived 2 doors away from the chapel, which is crazy. Like, and he'd been literally for the last 3 months looking out of his window, waiting for us to appear in the area to sort of have a chat with us. Anyway, he took us on a tour of the chapel. We went around, looked in sort of every nook and cranny, and it said where the asbestos was, where kind of who sat in that chair and all that sort of jazz. And it's just amazing sometimes the heritage and the stories and the history that goes with some of these bigger projects. So for me, it feels like you're buying into something historical, making it modern, but keeping the flavour and the kind of the background and the heritage of the area. So that's for me, that's really special.
I just like doing different things, going into like the land and development thing. I like doing different things, and like you and I have crazy ideas about what we want to do, and from lake houses to upside down houses to loads of different things that we want to try, and I know that we will do it, and we will get there, and we will do different things. But every site that we do is different, which is fantastic because it brings a different challenge to us, right? And it brings a different element, but it always does make me laugh when we go around these sites and we initially look at them and things like that. So like talking about the chapel, I remember when we got the keys, and a lot of the time we do videos when we collect keys for things and stuff. And I remember going around the chapel on Facebook Live and I fell through the floor.
Oh God!
Because like you say with these things, you never know what you're going to do. I remember when we went and picked up the keys for an investor, and I remember when there was Ku Klux Klan stuff written all over the walls.
Christ.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get, and every day is different. But I find with development sometimes and land stuff, there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more different elements to it. So each day is even more different than just kind of like your standard refurb and things. That's why I like it, and I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, obviously, from a financial perspective, it's a bigger entry point. Obviously, because you're going to be
much bigger.
You're going to be going into something a little more serious, depending on how big you're building. But from a financial perspective and a time perspective, it is more serious. It's just more of a case of what your appetite is. I guess all of these three or four things that we've mentioned so far, it really depends on your risk appetite, your time frame, and what's important to you. Do you need money now, or do you need it in the future?
Absolutely.
And how much capital are you ready to put into things? And from our perspective, it's nice working with people that, for each of those different areas, that understand the kind of time sensitivity of all of these products. Because if you wanted to invest in the development but you need money now and you want cash flow and all the rest of it, that's not the product for you. And although we're not going to be giving people the financial advice, it's basically expectations should be managed. But I think there's a lot of advice and education out there and videos that people can learn from. But I do think that from my perspective, the bigger, larger developments are going to be more interesting longer term, just because it minimises the noise a little bit. You don't have to do so many of them. And as you get older and older and you get kind of wiser and kind of things evolve, you don't really want to be rushing around every day sort of trying to manage builders across 15 or 20 projects and having large teams. That's my perspective anyway. I know that some people do that successfully and manage multiple sites, but I think it's more about doing bigger, better, more solid investments and projects and fewer of them, rather than doing 50 million projects and sort of making small margins. And I think that's what we've learned from the flips and the buy, refurbish, refinance lesson. The service accommodation lesson taught us that by not owning something, it's more insecure and you're not in control.
Yeah.
The buy, refurbish, refinance and flip market told us that you need to be careful with margins, because you can slip up if you are not careful with builders and costings and timeframes.
Yeah.
And the developments have taught us that you can make money even if you make mistakes, but you just need to make sure those margins are decent too. So I think from each of the different things, we've learned different types of lessons. And I think going forward,
agreed,
I think investors should be aware of what they're getting into. What would you advise an investor now? Or say advice, we're not allowed to give advice, but what would you recommend investors to think about or to do based on the current market?
I wouldn't flip at the moment, unless you're happy. So for instance, right, totally depends where you want to flip, but I wouldn't particularly flip at the moment, especially around probably South Wales massively at the moment, unless you can buy houses for a decent amount of money. So we've literally, and that's ironic because we've got 3 flips going on at the moment. However, we bought them at the right price, and they're also very good buy, refurb, refinance properties. So we've got a longer term strategy there, which is why I'm explaining that. But I don't think I tend to flip here. There are some very good deals out there if you're looking at portfolio building on buy-to-lets. But again, I'd say if you've got a big pot of cash, that's probably what you want to do, to receive a bit of a passive income and then also hold the properties for 5-10 years.
Where did buy-to-lets come from? We haven't even spoken about those.
Well, they're like kind of like a buy, refurb, refinance kind of a little bit, aren't they? I guess if you're going to park money, I wouldn't buy a portfolio of buy-to-lets personally. I'd rather buy a portfolio of flats because I think the yield is better personally, and you're making more of an income per month for similar amounts of investment. But then some people don't like managing multiple buildings, so that's that.
Yep.
I'm not a HMO lover. Neither are you, actually, are you?
Why are we talking about stuff we haven't even mentioned in this discussion?
I know. That's a good point. I guess I'm just saying what I wouldn't invest in at the moment, but that's just me personally.
Okay.
HMOs, buy-to-lets, I wouldn't invest in. I wouldn't invest in flips.
What would you
I
invest
would
in
consider investing. Wait, hear it, because you might not like this. I would consider investing in SAs for the right contract in the right area. And you didn't delve into this too much, but for me, I'm a bit of more of a lover of not construction in terms of SAs, but if government contracts can be agreed for certain things.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we're actually exploring at the moment. So I would invest in SAs for secure government contracts. Absolutely,
Yep.
all day long, because usually they're anywhere between 3 to 5 years. And the other thing I would invest in is I'd invest in development for the pure reason of sometimes I think it's always good to step back and just see what other companies are doing. And I think that it's very interesting that housing associations, particularly in South Wales, we know this, and I'm not so sure in Essex. Obviously, I don't know as much there, but I find it very, very interesting that housing associations are trying to accumulate as much land as possible.
I think a lot of the big banks and big companies are trying to accumulate as much land and development as they can. And you're right. You're right. You have to sometimes look around and go, who's doing what and why are they doing it? And the thing for me is that there was a statistic, I think, a couple of months ago to say, was it Lloyds Bank was the biggest buyer of real estate last year in the UK, which makes you think, why are the banks purchasing more and more land or development opportunities?
I think it was something like by 2025, and quote me if I'm wrong here, by 2025 they'll be the UK's largest landlord.
Yeah, and you have to think, why is that? And I get the direction they're moving into, but I think you're right. I think serviced accommodation I would invest in, but under the right circumstances, where it's a long contract with a fixed rental income from a government affiliation with limited amount of management involvement from the council or from whoever would be managing it. So,
and that is possible as well. A lot of people might listen to this and go, "Ha, that's the dream." Well, I promise you, it is possible.
It is possible, and if we do get something agreed and we do, get into that market, then we can share how that's going.
Absolutely.
But I think you agree with you in terms of planning gain and land opportunities. That's where I think the next level and a lot of attention is going to be paid now, because it's not really beneficial to sell something now, but to be in the process of either building something or getting planning to be able to build something is going to be a good time to do that, because a lot of people don't really want to buy it at the moment because they think it's overpriced. So it's better to be doing those things, the preparation phases, and maybe monetizing and capitalizing on opportunities that way.
Like you said, option agreements. If you can agree option agreements on parcels of land, then your upfront cost is just the planning side of things. So, for me, that's a no-brainer. There's one more thing that I haven't mentioned actually, which is commercial conversions, which is obviously the chapel. I am into commercial conversions as well. It's just again finding the right margin, because a lot of people. There's a lot of commercial units available, but then you need to check that you can actually legally convert it. It's the right planning classes, which isn't too complicated to find out, but it's something that you obviously need to do. And the other one is some people have already cottoned on to the fact that you can split X into 5 flats and make money, so they've raised the price a little bit of the asset. So I do like a commercial conversion, but I'd say similar to the SA side of things, it needs to be at the right price.
I guess regardless of what you're investing in, I always say 2 things. If you're an active investor, you need to get the right education. And then once you get the right education, then you can start to work with the right people. If you're a passive investor, the first thing you need to do is not find the deal, but find the person or the company that you want to work with.
Absolutely.
And then after that, find the right deal, because a lot of people that we talk to are passive investors, and the reasons why they have had bad experiences is because they've got into bed with people that are just not good eggs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've not really heard many stories of where people have got into bed with good people and then not had a good relationship. It's always been the person's gone bad, not the deal's gone bad. And don't get me wrong, there will be deals that don't work out for whatever reason, but the risks are not as big as getting into bed with somebody who is not ethical, moral, etc. So I think that would be my little resume for today. my little kind of moral of the story.
Nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, don't know about that. But yeah, let's wrap it up for now, and we'll be back next week with another dose of property knowledge and sharing of information. What are we going to talk about next week?
That's a really good question. What can we talk about next week? Why don't we...
Do you know what I want to talk about next week?
I always wonder what you're going to say here. Go on. Alternative strategies.
Alternative investments.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
And also, does the image reflect the reality? Do you understand that?
I think I do, but go on, explain what you mean by it.
I mean, like, posing in front of a Lamborghini or on a yacht and, sort of...
Yes, I thought that's what you were going to say.
All that sort of jazz, so...
Yeah. Let's delve into that. That's an interesting one, especially within the property world, because a lot of it is revolved around social media and the way things look on social media, particularly success.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, great stuff. We shall see you next week, and thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.